Boy, another fabulous day in paradise. Hi everyone, we're on the beach, the huge transition zone between land and sea. And normally this is a pretty quiet area, not a whole lot of change. But sometimes it becomes vicious and destructive. As we're enjoying our living in the coastal empire, we're getting into harm's way. Mother Nature essentially is trying to balance the Earth's temperature. One of the ways she does that is with a hurricane, which is in fact a huge heat engine that gets its power from the warm ocean waters. We're glad you're with us tonight because some of the area's finest and most experienced broadcast meteorologists are about to give you a wake-up call. We're not going to scare you, but we want you to know the risks, and we want to empower you with the knowledge on how to survive the storm. We got great experts that are going to help us out. We're going to talk about the latest forecasting tools, the latest information technologies, and all the planning that we can squeeze into 1 hour with the WTOC First Alert Severe Weather Watch.
This is WTOC
St. Patrick's Day Parade from downtown Savannah.
Thanks from the Children's Hospital.
Welcome to the Vidalia Onion Festival.
It was a great day for the heritage. Thanks for watching.
This is a WTOC original presentation. In a Category 3 hurricane, you wouldn't see anything but treetops on Wilmington Island from this vantage point. That's the message from the Coast Guard as they survey the community from the sky.
They just get caught off guard, not thinking it's going to be as bad as it is, and it can be pretty significant, deeply emotional event offshore.
In downtown Savannah, Emergency Management Director Dan Stowers has 2,000 critical workforce ready for the hurricane.
We can't script what we're going to do after a hurricane. Our best plan to have the right people in place to respond to what the storm leaves us.
What do you need when the storm bears down, and where do you get it?
Convenience stores are the first stores that are open, and they're usually the last stores that are closed.
We're moving into the teeth of the hurricane season. The next few weeks are the most likely time for a hurricane to strike. We want you to be informed. We want you to be ready. This is the WTOC First Alert Severe Weather Watch. For the next hour, we're going to tell you things you need to know and do as you head into the most active part of the hurricane season. Hello again, everybody. I'm WTOC meteorologist John Weatherby, joined by the market's senior broadcast meteorologist, Pat Prokop, and WTOC morning meteorologist, Dave Turley. If you take only one thing from this special, let it be this. If severe weather threatens, these are the guys you want to pay attention to. They have the experience and the tools and the commitment to do what's best for you and your family to be safe. And let's get right to it. Patrick, what's the outlook for the hurricane season?
Well, the outlook for the season is calling for some activity in the Atlantic as usual, and a list of names of storms as usual has been prepared. We already passed through Chantal. We'll keep an eye on the rest of the season, but what is the actual outlook for this year? And on the average, we have about 12 named hurricane or named storms a year. 13 to 20 is expected for this year. Hurricanes about 6 on the average this year. Well, we're expecting 7 to 11, so that's an increase on the 60-year average. And intense storms, that's the one you really have to pay attention to. On the average, 3 is what we have, but this year, anywhere from 3 to 6 intense storms. What's an intense storm? That's a storm with the winds of 115 miles an hour or greater, maybe even 110 miles per hour or greater. But let's talk about risk from hurricanes. More importantly, how about a storm coming in from the Gulf of Mexico? Should we be concerned about such a storm? It cuts across the Gulf of Mexico into southeast Georgia, eastern South Carolina. What are the risks associated with this type of storm? Well, let me show you. It's pretty low for a storm surge. Don't expect much of a storm surge from a Gulf incoming storm, but flooding is likely and tornado activity is likely. Usually on the east side of the storm is where you have a lot of tornado activities, and if the storm center passes to our west, high risk for tornadoes. Severe winds, the risk is moderate because the storm will be weakening as it passes across the land mass. Well, what about a hurricane coming in from the Atlantic that goes parallel to the coast? We see such storms many times getting close to our coast. Again, what are the risks for these type storms? Well, once again, the storm surge risk is fairly high. Flooding is moderate. Tornado chances are low because, again, the east side of the storm remains out in the water. Severe winds, particularly along the coast, the risk is high. Now, what about the bad type hurricane, a hurricane that is perpendicular to the coast. In other words, a storm that comes in from the Atlantic and comes crashing into the coast, moves inland, and then moves up in toward the northeast away from our area after it made landfall. Well, this is the worst case scenario. The storm risk is likely the storm surge, the flooding, tornadoes, and severe wind. Worst case scenario. Coming up later in the program, Dave Turley is going to have more information about the risk of storm surge and the effects of the surge. But do you think this type storm could happen? Yes, it can. When you look at the history of the 1800s in our area, we had a lot of storms coming in from the Atlantic Ocean that were perpendicular to the coast that produced severe flooding and damage across southeastern Georgia. Nonetheless, we'll have more information coming up about the hurricane season shortly.
Coming up, we wanted you to get an idea of the storm surge threat, so we called on the U.S. Coast Guard to put us in position to take a look. That story's just ahead on WTOC's First Alert Severe Weather Watch.
This is Richmond Hill from the cockpit of the United States Coast Guard's MH-65 Delta Dolphin helicopter. Of the places in our training flight around the coastal empire, Richmond Hill, with its convergence of waterways and people, causes major concern for Commander Greg Fuller, who understands that one of the dynamics in a hurricane is human nature.
They just get caught off guard, not thinking it's going to be as bad as it is, and it can be pretty significant, deeply emotional event offshore.
Chatham County's surge map paints a picture in red of a hurricane's potential threat, but that picture is rendered even more vivid from the sky as the relationship between water and homes becomes clearer. The impact from a direct hit from a hurricane would be devastating for us, be it Cat 1, Cat 2, all the way to a Cat 5. And the best way to see that is with these guys from above.
So I got the high tension wires there on the water across the Savannah River there.
Even in the lowest level hurricane, a Category 1, Wilmington Island would be underwater. In a Category 3, you wouldn't see anything but treetops from this vantage point. Hilton Head's golf courses are a continuous water hazard in just a Cat 1, and the Tybee Pier, a mere memory. In the event of those catastrophes, the Coast Guard's Dolphin is an ambulance in the sky.
To assume a first responder role of search and rescue if that's required, as well as post-storm damage assessments.
There is some thunderstorm activities you saw.
In the briefing room, a careful calculus precedes every Dolphin deployment.
The first thing we do is do a risk assessment. Weather conditions, wind conditions, the environment we're going into. Is it offshore that we're more familiar with, or is it an inland case where there could be wires or other hazards? Is it a nighttime case? All these variables play in as to how we will respond.
Coast Guard Air Station Savannah is involved in about 250 rescues a year, with each involving dangers that can't be explained or predicted. That uncertainty would be magnified exponentially in the event of a hurricane. Commander Fuller says that precautions on the part of the public can minimize the risk not only for themselves, but also for the guardians whose job it is to try to save them.
Really heed the evacuation notices, because basically those that don't, or those, I put my crew into harm's way to rescue those that don't take advantage of those notices. So there's plenty of warning for hurricanes. There's time now to prep for all of their kits, emergency kits, but the biggest thing is the evacuation. I think a lot of people try to tough it out, and those are who I have to put my crew into harm's way for.
Thanks, Jamie and Commander Fuller. That was a great perspective on the relationship of land and water in a coastal area. Dave tells us more about the dynamic of a storm surge.
All right, John, as we're talking about storm surge, I want to talk about the worst case scenario for the Savannah area. That would be a slow-moving tropical system, whether it's a hurricane or a tropical storm, coming ashore south of the Savannah area during a high tide. And the highest water levels as the system moves on in is always going to be on the right front quadrant of the storm as the storm is moving this way closer to the coast. So as we project that storm and move it closer to the coast, you see the highest water levels would bring it right into the coastal areas here of Chatham County and up into Beaufort County as well. That's where we're going to see the highest storm surge. So what is storm surge? Well, it's the rise of water generated by a storm over and above the predicted astronomical tides. So if you look at that on a map here, we can see high tide, and then we get the storm surge moving on in. You see all the flooding caused by that. And then we can actually see some of the more of the surf atop of that storm surge as well. That's called the storm tide, but it pushes a rush of water inland, which causes all the flooding across the region. The greatest threat to life and property during a storm is caused by storm surge. Flooding can occur miles away from the coast, and even a tropical storm can cause significant flooding. So let's take a look at some flooding potentials. This is a look at a regular Chatham County area here. There's the coast. That's inland. No storm surge. You see we're okay. Category 1 storm, the blue shows where we're going to see some flooding. Most of the coastal areas, including Tybee Island, going into flooding. Category 2, you're seeing more in the Georgetown area, back over towards the Pooler region as you move up into a Category 3. Moving into a Category 4, most of Interstate 95 is underwater. Heading into Category 5, you see only 3 little areas here that are not going to be affected by any of that storm surge flooding. So it's very important to heed the warnings when it's time to evacuate for any storm. John?
Thank you. That was great. And we want to say thank you to Georgia Power, Ken Nugent, Honda, Ogeechee Tech, and Window World, sponsors of our WTOC Severe Weather Watch. Just ahead, a critical workforce ready to restore Savannah in the event of a hurricane. We'll meet the man in charge right after this.
With a population of nearly 140,000 plus thousands of tourists on any given day, managing the city of Savannah's hurricane preparations is a complicated and multifaceted undertaking, as Emergency Management Director Dan Stowers is the point man for those efforts.
We do set the table. We set the table, but we can't do it without all of the partners that we rely on in the city of Savannah.
The city's plans incorporate some obvious elements, police and fire, but also the less obvious but perhaps more critical, public works, whose responsibilities include water and clearing the roads.
We have over 2,000 critical workforce personnel for the city of Savannah that we expect to ride out the storm here and recover the city.
Stowers' top priority for his critical workforce is coordinating their efforts,
so that every department is clear on what the city's priority, life safety, and then the restoration of critical resources. We have pre-identified those top 5 facilities that we need to gain access to. And from there, it's going to be situationally dependent. We know that we want to work with our partners at the county and the state to ensure that we have access to the hospitals, whether it be St. Joseph Candler Memorial or Candler Hospital. We also want to make sure that we have access to our command and control facilities.
Situationally dependent is a favorite Stowers phrase as he grapples with the impossibility of creating an airtight plan for an unknowable circumstance.
We can't script what we're going to do after a hurricane. Our best resources or our best plan is to have a flexible plan, to have the right people in place to respond to what the storm leaves us.
As for the citizens dependent on the city's infrastructure, Stowers knows exactly what they should do.
If you look at what the residents and the survivors of not only Hurricane Katrina, but Superstorm Sandy and other events, when the winds subside, when the storm passes, if you have survived the storm, residents need to understand that public safety, our fire, our police, our emergency medical technicians, they're going to be busy. They're going to have limited resources, limited capabilities. They're not going to be able to provide the level of service that our residents have become accustomed to. They are better off going through. Yes, we understand that evacuating is a hassle, but what would be a bigger hassle is to have survived the storm, have some type of injury or need, and you're cut off from public safety for days or even weeks.
All of the responsible people agree when an evacuation is ordered, get out. Jamie shows us the best way out of our cities.
So you need to know how to get out of town when the evacuation order is put into place. And if you're in Beaufort County or Jasper County, all roads lead north. 21 is the way out. So if you're coming from St. Helena or Ladies Island, you take 21 into Beaufort and go north on Trask Parkway. And further north, you're going to Gardens Corner to 17 up 303, and that is your best way out of town. So make plans along the way so you know where to stay if you're getting out of town. If you're getting out of town from Hilton Head Island, 278 up to 462, not 170. The Broad River Bridge is pretty much rendered useless during a hurricane evacuation, so that is your route out of Hilton Head. And if you're in Sun City, you're taking 95 north of Ridgeland towards Yemassee. All roads lead north. That is the best way to get out of the city. Now, if you're talking about Chatham County or counties in the Coastal Empire, 16 and 16 is going to be all west lanes. You've seen the hurricane evacuation routes, all west lanes, and go as far as our law enforcement tells you along 16, maybe even past Statesboro if the Statesboro exits are full.
All right, thanks, Jamie. Now we know where we have to go to evacuate for a storm, but what exactly is a storm? Well, we're talking about either a tropical storm, that's a tropical cyclone with sustained winds of at least 39 miles per hour or higher, or a hurricane, which is a tropical cyclone with sustained winds of 74 miles per hour or higher. So a hurricane watch is going to be issued 48 hours in advance if we're thinking that hurricane conditions are expected in our area. Hurricane warnings are issued if we think the hurricane's going to be here within 36 hours. That'll give us a hurricane warning for the area. Same story for the tropical storm watch. It's issued 48 hours in advance, and then if you go for a tropical storm warning, they're going to issue those 36 hours in advance. John?
And Pat, try as much as we'd like, we won't all be able to cram into Walmart when a storm threatens. Well, where can we turn? Greg Parker's got a suggestion, and that's just ahead. Gas for your car, water, over-the-counter medicine. When a hurricane bears down, it may surprise you to know who answers the call to meet the needs of people in the path of the storm.
It's during times of disaster, hurricanes, convenience stores are the first stores that are open, and they're usually the last stores that are closed.
At Parker's, they've gone to great lengths to make sure that folks can get what they need up until the last possible moment.
We do a two-stage board up, and we do it in stages. So we board all the windows up and we keep the doors unboarded so that we could be the last people out.
Almost everything except for the front door, so that we are ensured that we can be prepared to get out as quickly as possible to protect the safety of our employees, but also to be able to be open as long as we can to supply those services and those products that our customers need.
To meet the demand of a sudden evacuation, Parker's goes around the clock.
We typically stay open 24 hours, and I will add extra help to make sure that we're stocked up and ready to go.
And then, once the storm has passed, look for them to be first to return to operation.
We can open with 1 or 2 employees, and we can open with 1 generator. With that comes a great responsibility, and we shoulder that responsibility very well. We understand it, and we want to be able to respond when our customers need it.
A quick stop at Parker's for gas and things you forgot in the days before a storm is a must, but that should be for last-minute stuff. Most of your emergency kit should already be prepared, and what should be in that kit? Glad you asked. Ron Wallace and I posed the same question to the folks at the American Red Cross, and here's the answer.
Well, the first thing you have to do, John, is get organized. When time comes to leave, you have to leave. There's not a lot of choice when the authorities say you have to go.
Mandatory evacuations, get out the door.
And absolutely. And there are lots of things. In fact, you can find a list of these things on the Red Cross website. But let's go over a few of them right now.
Look at all this water.
You really want to have a good supply of water with you to take along, and also extra food. Canned, non-perishable foods are essential because you just don't know where you're going to be and how things are going to wind up over the next couple of days.
Can opener, that's a good idea.
That's right. And rope batteries, NOAA weather radio. This is a good source of information during the course of a storm because there's constantly fresh information is being provided. Batteries for all of your electronic devices and flashlights because you may wind up in the dark.
And
a first aid kit.
for yourself.
Oh, I love this. Look at this. Gloves. Oh, man.
You never know. You may have to get out and move a tree limb or something.
Something. Personal toiletries and stuff?
Absolutely. The essentials that we all need for good hygiene. And, of course, some of the more most important things that you need to take along with you. And also bleach. Bleach comes in handy for disinfecting things. It's a very versatile product, can do a lot of things.
Sure.
Bug repellent, a hand sanitizer, and even a portable fire extinguisher.
Look how much we've got here. We're talking several days you've got to be ready for, correct?
Several days. I would expect you could possibly be out for as much as a week.
That's important. What's in
your
there?
Documents, your important things, insurance policies, children's birth certificates, all those kinds of things that you have to have actually in paper form rather than digital. For those things that you can have on digital form, these are memory sticks. Some of them hold as much as 32 gigabytes of information.
Is that a lot?
That's a lot.
Okay,
and when you're talking about documents. Photographs, on the other hand, pictures take up a lot of memory. But I would imagine you can get your family's life collection of pictures stored on just a couple of these.
And a good idea to do that now before any storm comes along. This will take a while to put together.
It'll take a while to put together, but again, do it now because it takes some time.
I like the extra set of keys.
Extra set of car keys. Maps for Georgia. Camera. That's also very essential. Take a picture of your house before the storm and all the things that are inside, your valuables and things that you may need to file an insurance claim for. Extra cash. As soon as that storm has a name, make your way to the ATM and get yourself some extra cash.
Power's down. That ATM's not going to be working.
Absolutely. And you just never know. The ATMs are going to run dry pretty quick.
This is a great idea.
Entertainment for the children. We do have these modern devices such as the DVD players and the movies and the cars for the kids. But the old-fashioned entertainment, a coloring book and crayons works wonders for a lot of kids.
Again, there's even more here. What's that?
Rain gear, bedding, of course, an umbrella. A little windy, though, in case of the wind, the umbrella may not work so well. But baby supplies.
Fresh change of clothes.
Fresh change of both outer and under.
Unmentionables under there. And a good pair of shoes, too.
Dry shoes and socks. Absolutely
that's
essential.
Total comfort there. Okay, this whole table, again, the list is on our website and on
the Red Cross website. You can find a whole list of items and things that you need to be prepared for and take with you on either website. And be sure you do that because, again, the bottom line is when you're asked to leave, it will be mandatory. You have to leave.
And glad you're with us tonight, and thanks to our sponsor friends, Georgia Power, Ken Nugent, Honda, Ogeechee Tech, and Window World. We're glad they're with us too. Tourists, tourists, tourists! What does Visit Savannah do when a hurricane bears down? We'll find out right after this. With 12.4 million tourists coming to town each and every year, Visit Savannah's main focus during hurricane season is keeping folks informed about what's going on at their favorite vacation destination.
We are most concerned with those folks that are planning their travel into Savannah and communicating with them, making sure that they know what's happening, what the potential of landfall is here in Savannah.
If a hurricane were to affect the historic district, Visit Savannah would rely on local media for emergency information and Chatham Emergency Management to help stranded tourists.
We begin working with the folks at SEMA months in advance. We talk about each month, what are the busiest days, what conventions are in town, what days of the week or days of the month that will have the most people in town.
Marinelli says after the storm is when Visit Savannah really swings into action, protecting the city's reputation and ensuring that the tourist spigot continues to pump full force.
The first thing we're going to do is really take inventory with local safety officials, SEMA, city and county leadership, and so forth. We're also going to communicate with all of our partners, hotels, attractions, restaurants in town, to understand what's going on. But the most important role that we have is to get the word out to national and international audiences of what's going on here, that Savannah is open for business. You know, so many times, national media will showcase maybe the worst situation in town, and our message is to make sure that people understand that we haven't been devastated here, that Savannah is open for business, and there's still the inn is still open.
The folks at Visit Savannah are interested in preserving the city's tourist business after the storm.
But those of you who have evacuated probably want some idea of what to expect when you return. Dave Turley has that story.
You've evacuated to Atlanta because the coastal empire and low country have suffered a direct hit from a hurricane. What now?
With a major storm, it's probably going to be 7 to 10 days before general population will be allowed back in.
Dennis Jones is Deputy Director of Chatham Emergency Management. He knows that there are many variables involved in returning home after a hurricane, and he knows he can't predict them all.
When you come back to a community that's been hit by a devastating storm, you have to realize that you still need to be self-sustained. We will have provisions available for food and water, but any other comfort items, you need to make sure you have those.
Jones says that re-entry into a community will happen in phases, with public safety leading the way to ensure that it's safe to come home. Then critical workforce to begin to restore the city, and finally residents and businesses. And how will you know when it's time to come back?
We do have triple redundancy in our website and our phone communications, so we'll be able to post information online. We'll also be able to post it on the voicemail system that we have that's actually housed somewhere else.
The phone number with re-entry message is 855-880-2362. But you'll also get re-entry information on your weather radio, the SEMA website, and of course, WTOC.com.
While much of Savannah evacuates in serious storms, virtually all of Beaufort County evacuates, even in the weakest hurricane category. Jamie Ertl has more.
Beaufort County is the only county along the South Carolina coastline that has a mandatory evacuation for a Category 1 storm.
97% of the public lives in storm surge areas. 90% of Beaufort County.
So Beaufort County Emergency Management Director wants you to think long term.
And you've got to think that way, because not everything is, well, we take a hit and then we come back the next day. People don't get back as quick as they used to get back. The infrastructure is built up. Roadways, the storms are getting worse.
And Beaufort County is the prime example of increased infrastructure along the coast. More than 41,000 people have moved to the county in the past 10 years. On a normal day, Rebo Road has 4 lanes, and during 1999's evacuation of Hurricane Floyd, it was knocked down to 1 lane for debris cleanup. And that's what you have to expect when coming back into town: major delays and possibly closures for days. No one is allowed re-entry until the governor rescinds the evacuation order. Then it's up to the county council chairman to let the people back into the county. Lastly, the mayor authorizes re-entry into their municipality.
Before my daughter became of age to go to college, we always put her in a place that if there was long-term displacement, she could actually start a school year somewhere else.
In 2004, the people of Fort Myers Beach didn't know when they'd get back to their island homes. Hurricane Charley, the Category 4 storm, leveled their homes, changed the beach line forever, and taught them a hard lesson: have a long-term recovery plan.
It's a whole lot easier to sit back and say, okay, in 2 weeks, if I'm not back home, I'm going to do this, than it is 2 weeks from now sitting in a hotel room trying to figure what you're going to do.
Over 600 patients at St. Joe's Candler Hospitals. What happens to them? That's coming up. Within the St. Joseph's Candler healthcare system, the plan is to react to a hurricane threat in stages, says Emergency Preparedness Manager Bob Staples.
We will probably start first looking at discharging patients. And we have a group, a discharge team that goes through and decides what patients may be able to be discharged to go home to their families. Then stopping elective surgery would be our next level.
The final course of action, if Savannah is still in the hurricane crosshairs, is an evacuation of the remaining people in the 630-bed system, 2 healthcare systems that have been prearranged to accept Savannah's sick.
They'll go inland, some probably around the Macon area, Augusta area. That would probably be in a worst case scenario.
Well, let's hope it never comes to that. But it's good to know that St. Joe's Candler is prepared. Hey, Pat, what's going on in our global picture that's being brought to bear on our hurricane planning?
Well, one of the things we need to watch is the water temperature in the Atlantic Ocean. That dictates the strength of the energy values that the hurricanes can draw upon. And in the summer months, we see these water values in the low 80s to middle 80s, and not only off our coast, but a large portion of the Atlantic Ocean is very warm. This is the fuel supply for hurricanes. Think of it as an octane rating. The higher the water temperature, the higher octane rating for the fuel that a hurricane needs to burn and to produce the violent winds and torrential rains. Also, one of the things we're noticing that even though the water temperature is warm here in the tropical Atlantic Ocean, farther to the north, we noticed this area starts migrating further northward over the course of years as the global climate warming continues. We see the water temperature going further and further northward, which would indicate storms will have a tendency to travel farther northward as well. Maybe more sandy type storms, we'd hope not, but the potential is definitely there because the water temperature is warmer farther to the north. Now, we look at the global conditions and we see hurricanes developing in the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and the tropical Atlantic Ocean. And all the way out to the coast of Africa, we see storms moving off the coast of Africa and even off the continent of Africa. Here is the Intertropical Convergence Zone across the area of Central Africa. We watch these waves one by one march across the continent off the coast into those warm waters of the Atlantic Ocean. And as those storms progress through the trade winds moving from the east to the west, where they go when they get closer to the North America continent is a question that is hard to answer at any given time, except a couple of days before the storm makes actual landfall. Well, that's one of the things we watch for in the global situations on hurricanes. We could see an increase in strength in hurricanes over the next several years.
Just ahead, we'll see what the kids are worried about. And believe me, in this segment, the adults will learn something too. That's just ahead. Welcome back. Sometimes the best questions come from kids because they're not afraid to ask whatever's on their mind. And whatever's on their mind might be the most important thing for everybody. Here's Dave.
Well, we talked about the start of the hurricane season, June 1st. Do we know when the end of the hurricane season is? Can we see that and look at what it is?
November 20th?
Close. It's the end of November, which is the last day of November is November 30th. So basically 6 months out of the year, half of the year, we are in a hurricane season. The peak of the hurricane season is, as you can see this, it kind of starts slow here in the beginning of June. You usually get just a couple of hurricanes here maybe in June and July. But look at this big spike here. It's the end of August, right through the middle of September is the peak of the hurricane season. And why do you think that is? What is the main ingredient we need to have hurricanes?
Warm water.
Warm water. Water takes a lot longer to heat up than the land does, than the air does. Okay? So it takes a little while for the ocean waters to start to heat up. So again, our temperatures right now on the sea surface is about 72. We're going to start getting into the 80s in June. We're going to be in the mid to upper 80s here at the end of August. So it takes a while for things to heat up. Once we get up there, that's when you start to see a lot of the stronger storms and a lot of hurricanes developing. It's usually late August into September. Once you start getting in the fall season, which begins in the middle, well, September 21st usually, well, look what happens. Temperatures start to get cooler, don't they? We start to get some cooler nights. Look what happens to the rate and frequency of those tropical storms. Starts going way down. So you need to have the moisture source, the warm surface temperatures, and that's usually in the end of August into September.
How do hurricanes move?
They move from the upper level winds. The upper level winds will steer it depending on which direction they're moving.
Do hurricanes stay on the coast?
It depends on what the winds are going. They can follow right up the coast as well. Once the hurricane starts to interact with land, it starts to lose its intensity because it's losing its moisture source. It's losing that warm, unstable ocean water, which is providing a lot of moisture for the storm. So once it usually moves into any type of land or starts to get close to it where it's interacting with it, that's when the storms tend to weaken.
Can more than one hurricane hit the same place at once?
Not at one time. It's usually going to be one or the other. Now, hurricanes have kind of merged with each other. Like I said, there was like 4 hurricanes out in the Atlantic at one time. Normally, the larger of the storm will kind of absorb the moisture of the other one and create a little bit more of a bigger storm. But you're not going to get two right next to each other that move over the same area. That usually doesn't happen.
How much stuff can a hurricane suck up at once?
Hurricanes don't usually suck up like a tornado. Now, the thunderstorms rotating around the hurricane can produce tornadoes, but the storm itself is just a rotating area of thunderstorms. It's not lifting anything up. It's dumping a lot of rain and blowing a lot of wind around. So it's not really going to pick stuff up. But the wind associated with that can do a lot of damage, especially in those stronger hurricanes. Again, if you get winds sustained, we're talking about continuous winds of 100 miles per hour up to 155. That's going to do a lot of damage to your homes and trees. Trees knocked down, fall on homes. So that's where major problems are.
Just ahead, we've got a great tip for you to stay in touch with everybody. Stay right there. A guy named Bruneseau built the Paris sewer system in Napoleon's day. A guy named Chuck Eaton's going to tell you why that matters to us.
That system was not based on the fact or the possibility that every toilet in Paris would be flushed at the same time. Same thing for our streets, highways, water, sewers, telephones. They're not based on the probability that everyone will demand service simultaneously.
Just took a second.
To deal with everybody calling at one time and nobody connecting, Chuck offers the lowest of high-tech options: text.
The most reliable method is simple texting. For example, if you and I have a voice conversation, we have nailed up a path between you and me, and we've dedicated that path to the duration of the conversation. If I send you a text message that says I'm stuck in traffic at exit 104, it takes the system a few milliseconds to zap that message and it's gone. Texting works when nothing else will.
In the threat of a hurricane, there's also a great chance of power loss and evacuations. If that happens, we still want you to be informed as possible to help you make safe decisions. That's why WTOC and your First Alert weather team offer many ways for you to keep up with us. If you are away from a television, we will be streaming our coverage live on WTOC.com. Or if you lose power, you can still watch us on your tablet or mobile device from our mobile app available on the iPhone, the Droid, and the BlackBerry devices. Or you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter feeds. And if you are evacuating and on the road, we will be simulcasting on these Clear Channel radio stations. So, how can you make sure that you have access to WTOC this hurricane season? Make sure you have downloaded the WTOC app to your tablets and mobile phones and keep them charged in case of power loss. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and in case of evacuation, listen to us live on Clear Channel radio stations.
We wanted a glimpse of how a family prepares for a hurricane, and we got one with the Ryans. That's just ahead. Meet the Ryans. Kelly, a volleyball ace at Blessed Sacrament. Kevin, the younger, an animations student at Savannah Arts. Dad Kevin, who works at Mitsubishi. And Mom Christy with Georgia Power. Bandit is in charge of security. If a hurricane threatens their Southbridge home, the Ryans have not one plan, but several.
Depends on the hurricane and the direction that it's going to take, and as well as, you know, the category.
We have my brother in Statesboro.
Mhm.
We'll head there.
We have relatives in North Carolina, and again, depending on the track of the hurricane.
Christy is from Savannah and lived on the water near Isle of Hope as a child. She remembers Hurricane David's 1979 visit all too well.
We boarded the house, and we have a place underneath our house where we stay put. It was pretty scary. My perspective, I won't do that again.
One of the lessons she carried away from the Hurricane David experience is to heed the evacuation warnings, not just for yourself, but for those who might be called upon to rescue you.
It's one thing if you want to put your life and your family's life in danger, But shame on you for having to put other people's lives in danger simply because you're too stubborn and you just do not want to leave.
You just want to hang out
and ride the storm.
Out. Yeah.
And you shouldn't do that.
The firefighters, the police officers, put all those guys' life at risk just because you wanted to stay there.
We've heard that theme over and over again tonight, and we can't say it enough. For everybody's sake, when an evacuation is ordered, get out of town. Gentlemen, thank you for the information that you've shared with us tonight. Pat, any final thoughts?
Well, yeah, we know the hurricane season begins on the beginning of the month of June and goes all the way through the month of November. We know that. But the key here is actually the intense portion of the hurricane season.
Oh, you have a name for that?
I call it the sweat period, because that's when you're going to start sweating, because that's about August 15th, thereabouts, middle of August, through about October 10th. When we look at the past history of hurricanes in the greater Savannah area, it's that time, October 15th through about August 15th through about October 10th, that when hurricanes threaten our area, those are the ones that could cause and did cause evacuations and major damages. So it's that time, and it's coming up. It's not that far away.
Not coming up at all.
The sweat period. So education is very important to know you need to know what to do in the event of a hurricane that comes in that causes an evacuation.
Hopefully we've showed you some of that information tonight. How about you, Mr. Charley? Any final thoughts?
I'd like to say it's always good to be prepared. We're getting closer to that sweat season. Thankfully, nothing's really going on now, but it's always good to be prepared just in case something was going to be moving in our area. Now's the time to prepare to keep you and your family safe. Know what you would do in case something was to possibly move into our region.
Okay, good thoughts. Thank you both. And remember, with our broadcast commitment, WTOC.com, our mobile news and weather apps, and our friends at Clear Channel Radio, the WTOC First Alert Weather Team has the tools, the experience, and the commitment to keep you safe. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Our executive producer, Jan Smith. Our special thanks to Jamie Ertel and Ron Wallace, who helped out tonight. Our director, Patrick Means, who's headed off to greener pastures. Patrick, we wish you the best. And our producer, Craig Harney, and a big thanks to all of our crew. We'll see you right back here tonight at 11. Good night, everyone.